Hello my dear listener and welcome to our channel. He actually waited 4 days before calling, 2 days longer than I thought. I listened as his smooth voice oozed through the phone. Tom, please be reasonable. I'm sure we can work out an agreement we're all happy with. Why don't you come by the office? We'll sit and discuss it like reasonable men. That's a great idea, Stan. I already know what I want. He hated being called Stan, always insisting on Stanley. I heard his irritated hiss, but he controlled it. That's just great, Tom. I do admire a reasonable man. What do you want? We'll have it ready when you come over. I want your daughter to honor the prenup as written. Nothing else is acceptable. Understand me, Stan? And as for coming over, it'll be a cold day in hell before I walk back into that place you call home. His control slipped, his good humor gone. You low-class jerk. I told her you were a gold digger, but would she listen? No. Now I'm going to have to clean up her mess just like I did when she was in college. You'll regret this, you miserable redneck. He was practically screaming by the end. Stan, are you threatening me? I'm hurt, Stan. I always thought highly of you. I was laying it on thick. We had hated each other from the moment we met. He couldn't speak for a minute, then exploded. I'm going to make one more attempt to be reasonable. 1 million after taxes and you can divorce her right after the election. I let a few seconds pass before answering. $1 million? Gee, let me think about that. Hell no. Not happening, Stanley. Old boy. You have a nice day now. Gotta run, feel free to call anytime. He was still screaming when I hung up. The man was delusional. His career was gone, his loving family likely destroyed, and about to be vilified by everyone with an opinion. The genie was out of the bottle, and he was still trying to make deals to fix it. I immediately sent 3 copies of what I had recorded off to safe places. I couldn't be too careful. He was wasting his efforts anyway. The wheels of justice were already turning, and nothing he could do would stop them now. I met her when I was laying cable by her house. I was a subcontractor with my own equipment. Everyone was switching to fiber optic and buried cables. They were faster, cheaper, and best of all, being underground, they weren't susceptible to weather. Barring earthquakes, floods, or a careless homeowner, they were practically indestructible. The company I worked for had gotten permission from the state to use their right-of-way for a fee, of course. I was in front of a house that was the largest in the neighborhood, multi-million-dollar homes, tall gates, a circular driveway. Expensive cars were parked haphazardly around, and it was obvious there was a party going on. I could hear music booming through my headphones, even over the sound of my machinery. It was an April afternoon, half of the time of year. I had taken my shirt off, trying to catch some sun before the weather really heated up. I didn't go to a gym or tanning beds, but working 8 to 10 hours a day 5 to 6 days a week kept me in terrific shape. I stopped to reload my cable spool and looked over at the house. There was a stunning brunette standing on the balcony in a small bikini, the smallest I'd ever seen. If it hadn't been black, I would have sworn she was wearing nothing at all. She swayed back and forth and then, suddenly, tumbled over the railing. I didn't believe my eyes for a moment, then I ran across the yard. I found her in the bushes under the balcony. She was scratched up pretty badly and clearly very drunk. She couldn't even stand. When I picked her up, she screamed, unable to bear weight on her feet. I set her back down gently and checked her over. Her left ankle was swollen to twice its normal size, and she moaned when I touched it. I made her as comfortable as I could and went to the front door. I rang the bell and knocked, but no one answered. The fence made it impossible to go around the house. I returned to her, thinking she might be able to call someone inside. She was still too intoxicated to talk, and her ankle was turning purple. I sighed and picked her up. I put her in my truck, quickly noting the address. 15 minutes later, I carried her through the emergency room doors. I set her down gently and walked to the desk. The staff had been watching me walk in. What happened to her? The nurse at the desk asked, handing me a clipboard. She fell off a balcony. I think she broke her ankle and I'm pretty sure she's drunk. Another nurse went off to check her while the others handed me a clipboard. Her name here, your name there, type of insurance, relationship, medical history. It was pretty self-explanatory. I pushed it back. I don't know her name. And I'm not giving you mine. I saw her fall off a balcony at a house I was working in front of. No one was home. She was in obvious distress. So I brought her here. I can give you the address. She'll tell you who she is and who to call when she sobers up, I'm sure. I lied about the party and I'm not sure why. Probably to make the story sound more urgent and to get her taken care of faster. The nurse at the desk frowned and tried to get me to sign. Not gonna happen, lady. I don't mind helping her, but I won't be responsible for her. Judging by the house, her family has a few dollars to spare. You shouldn't have a problem getting paid. Now, are you gonna treat her or what? She grumbled but didn't have much of a choice. I sat with her until they took her back, then left. The last thing I wanted was to be a designated babysitter for some rich kid. When I got back to my equipment, I noticed her driveway. All the cars were gone except for a small Mercedes parked up front. It was too late to get any more work done, so I packed up my machine onto the trailer. I wrestled with the idea but figured someone needed to know what had happened. I walked up the driveway and knocked on the door. A really attractive woman who resembled the girl opened it. I assumed it was her older sister, but I found out quickly it was her mother. She was 42 at the time but looked like she was in her early 30s. Her eyes were cool. "Can I help you?" "No, ma'am, but you can help someone else. I was working in front of your house earlier today and saw a woman fall off your balcony. I think she hurt her ankle pretty badly, so I took her to the ER at Methodist. I felt like someone needed to know. She was too hurt to think straight." "Oh my God!" she cried, running to her car. She peeled out of the driveway, leaving me standing there with the front door wide open. Rich folks are a strange bunch, I thought as I closed the door and made sure it was locked. I'd lost half a day and was on a tight schedule, so I was back bright and early on Saturday, working a 12-hour shift to finish my portion of the job. I glanced at the house a few times, debating whether to check on the girl, but there were no cars in the driveway, so I left. 5 weeks went by and I had mostly forgotten about it when someone knocked on my door. There were 2 women standing there, one on crutches. I didn't make the connection. I ran my business out of my home, so I thought they might be potential customers. "Can I help you ladies with something?" The older one smiled and said in a light voice, "Yes, you can invite us in and let us thank you." I moved out of the doorway and motioned for them to come in. "Thank me for what?" The younger one actually laughed. "He doesn't remember us, Mom. I'd think watching me fall would have made a bigger impact on you." Recognition dawned on me. "Balcony girl?" She smiled. "In the flesh, and my name is Eve. This is my mom, Greta. We came by to thank you for helping me." I sat them down and got them both a soft drink. "You're welcome. How's the ankle mending?" "I broke it in 2 places. My tennis days are over, I'm afraid. Good thing I was so out of it when I fell, or I would have been hurt a lot worse." Her mother drew in a sharp breath. "Relax, mother, it's the truth and you both know it." She turned back to me. "I wanted to come by earlier, but between my ankle and the counseling I've been doing, I didn't have the chance. I wanted to thank you for helping me and making me realize where my life was headed." Her mother looked uncomfortable. "Eve, I really don't think you should burden Mr. Y with details of your life." But Eve overruled her mother. "No, Mom, I want to tell him." She looked back at me. "Your help gave me a wake-up call. There were over 30 people in my house when I fell, and not one of them came looking for me. Mom ran them all out when she got home. She didn't know I was hurt until you knocked on her door. When they treated me at the hospital, besides the broken ankle, I had a concussion, a blood alcohol level of 0.17, just under poisoning, and they found a mild STD. When I woke up in the hospital, I had no idea how I got there, what was wrong with me, or how long I'd been out. Mom had been there for hours filling out forms when I came to." She paused. "Mom didn't want me to tell you all this, but it's important to me that you know. I want you to understand the kind of person I had become. I couldn't move for 10 days because I was in traction, and it gave me a lot of time to think. I started serious counseling just short of rehab. I learned a lot about myself, things I didn't want to learn. But I'm trying to change, to be better, and it took the kindness of a stranger to set me on that path. That, sir, is what I wanted to thank you for." I looked at the two women. They sat there as if they expected me to say something. All I can say is, you're welcome. Anyone would have done the same, and I'm glad you've decided to be a better person. We could all use a few more of those. Just out of curiosity, how did you find me? I didn't give anyone any information at the hospital, and your mom and I never exchanged names. For the first time, she giggled. I was wearing your shirt, remember? Something else I need to thank you for. That bikini didn't cover much, now did it? Not much at all, as a matter of fact. A thong bottom, and every time you moved, one or both breasts popped free of the top, I said, chuckling. I had a clean shirt with my company logo and contact information in one of the storage boxes on my trailer. T-shirts are walking billboards, and I'd gotten several jobs because of them. For that reason, I always carried 3 or 4 to give away. I got a 3X out and slid her into it. It went well down her thighs and preserved her modesty. I grinned. Yeah, I forgot about that. You're welcome. Her smile widened. It's become my favorite sleeping attire. She and her mother stood. Well, we won't keep you. Thanks again. She was almost at the door when she stopped. Oh yes, I almost forgot. My dad wants you to have dinner with us. Saturday, 7 sharp. I'm sure you remember where the house is. They were both shocked when I declined. I'm sorry, ladies. I have a commitment Saturday evening I just can't break, but thank you for the offer. Both stood with their mouths open in shock. Finally, Greta spoke. Do you know who my husband is? No, ma'am. I don't even know your last name. Eve giggled. It's Wallace. My dad's name is Stanley Wallace, as in Stanley Wallace, Speaker of the State House. Sure you won't reconsider? As gracious as the invitation is, what I have to do is time-sensitive and can't be postponed. Perhaps another time, with a bit more advanced notice. Greta stood in shock while Eve was laughing. Mom, can I tell Dad? He's not going to be happy. He doesn't take disappointment well. Eve took my hand. Thanks again for everything. Maybe we can have dinner another time. I find you fascinating. I'll give you plenty of advance notice, I promise. Before I could react, she leaned in, kissed my cheek and hopped into the car. I watched them drive away, thinking how strange it all was. I could still smell her perfume lingering on my cheek. It was pleasant. I was rattling around in the garage, loading what I needed for where I was going, when a convertible Mustang pulled into the drive. The door swung open and I heard her voice. Can I get a little help? It was Eve. I helped her out and handed her the crutches. I apologize. I don't want to make you late for your plans. I meant to be here sooner but got delayed. I'd like to try again. Would you join my parents and me for lunch next Saturday? Please? What could it hurt? I accept your invitation. Tell me a time and I'll be there. And just for clarification, I don't have a date tonight. I said I had something time-sensitive to do. She sat and watched me load up while we talked. This time-sensitive thing, can I come along? I looked at her, thinking. I don't think so. I don't think you'd enjoy it, and then I'd be obligated to entertain you, which I wouldn't enjoy. Please? I knew I was making a mistake. All right. We'll most likely be out all night. Still want to come? There was a glint in her eye. You're not going to hurt me, are you? Then yes, I'd love to accompany you. She made it sound like we were going to the opera. Call your mom. Tell her you won't be home until much later. She seemed surprised. I'm 22 years old. I don't need to call and get permission. I don't expect you to. I was thinking more along the lines of being thoughtful, so she wouldn't worry. It looked like the concept was foreign to her, but she called. Mom, hi. I'm with Mr. Y. I'll be with him most of the night. Didn't want you to worry. What? All right. She handed the phone to me. Thank you, Mr. Y. I think this is the first time she's called me about her plans since she was 16. Where are you taking her? I'm not going to spoil the surprise. Suffice it to say it's quiet, off the beaten path and completely safe. Well, try to have a good time. My daughter can be distracting at times. I stopped at a Walmart on the way out of town to pick a few things up. I wouldn't be long. Back in 15 minutes, I tossed the bags in the back of the truck. It took almost an hour to get there, the city lights long behind us. It seemed to magnify the stars. I turned up a driveway and stopped in front of a typical farmhouse for the area, whiteboard, black shutters. An older man, slender and spry for his age, came to the door. "Hi, Uncle John, just checking in. Anybody else here yet? Are you coming up?" Ron and Cassie and the young UNS Bob came. Junie couldn't make it. Fred, Celeste and the kids. Most of the gang is up there already. No, I'm staying in, getting too old for this. I couldn't help but notice a car parked discreetly in the back. Too old, or maybe got a better offer. I raised my voice. "How are you tonight, Marie?" A voice came from inside the house. "Fair to Midland, Tommy. Now why don't you go on up and stop teasing your uncle? We've got unfinished business." Uncle John stood there blushing, and I told him to have a good night. I climbed back into the truck before he started asking about my companion. We drove up the hill, stopping at the edge of a large meadow. 2 fires were burning and I could smell a grill going. 8 kids were roaming around the tents that had been set up. "What are we doing here?" Eve asked. "We came here to see a show, but it doesn't start for a few hours. Come on, I'll introduce you." Everyone was curious about her. I had never brought a woman before, and you could see the speculation in their eyes. Celeste fussed at me, saying we had almost missed dinner. Soon we had a plate of burgers, potato salad and baked beans in front of us. I was surprised to see Eve clean her plate. They got into a conversation about fashion and beauty products, and I took this as a sign to leave them alone and let the interrogation begin. I had warned everyone not to tell her what we were all doing here. I could tell it frustrated her to no end. She was clearly used to getting her way. After about 2 hours, Ron called out, "Almost time, folks, get ready." I startled Eve by jokingly telling her to take off her clothes. "What?" she exclaimed, startled. Celeste laughed as I handed her the bags I had picked up at Walmart. "Come on, honey, let's get into my tent so you can change." It was the last week of May and the air was chilly where we were. Eve was definitely underdressed in her thin t-shirt and jeans, staying close to the fire for warmth. I had bought her 2 sweatsuits and a pair of thick socks, guessing her size to be a medium. While she was changing, I set up the air mattress and sleeping bag on my platform. Over the years, we found it much more comfortable to use raised platforms. It made sleeping easier and saved us from waking up with sore necks. Celeste brought Eve back to me, now dressed in the sweatsuit with her hair tied back in a ponytail. "I'm sure she appreciated your foresight," Celeste teased. Despite the baggy clothes, Eve still looked amazing. "If you don't tell me what's going on, I'm going to explode." "This isn't some sort of cult, is it?" Eve asked, half joking but clearly uneasy. I grinned. "That's right, we're all star worshippers. Now lie down. Nothing bad will happen, just watch." She was still nervous, so she lay on the mattress as far away from me as possible. We lay there for about 15 minutes before Eve became impatient. "How long are we going to lie here?" "Most of the night." "Now hush, you said you wanted to come, so be still. The show should start any minute." Sure enough, 5 minutes later, a vivid meteor swept across the sky. "Did you see that?" she asked in a small, excited voice. "Yes, it's the Aquarid meteor storm. If we're lucky, we'll see 3 or 4 dozen. That's why we were there, far enough away from the city to escape light pollution. We were an informal astronomy club, mostly family, meeting whenever the conditions were perfect for stargazing. The air had gotten cooler, so I suggested, time to slip into the back. "Don't worry, you're safe with me." She flipped into the sleeping bag with a little snicker, snuggling closer against me. In a playful whisper she teased, "Yes, but who's going to keep you safe from me?" It was hard to focus with her lying so close, her warmth and presence distracting me. Just as I was about to give up on trying to stargaze, I felt a gentle tug on the back of my shirt. It was Amy, the 6-year-old daughter of Fred and Celeste. "Uncle Tommy, can I get in with you? Bobby and Jimmy are acting up and I can't sleep." I tousled her hair. "It's fine with me, baby, but I have a guest. If she says it's okay, climb in." With her best baby voice, Amy asked Eve, "Please, Miss Eve, I don't wiggle much and I won't make any noise." Eve's heart melted. Soon Eve went out and the rising sun woke me up. I looked over and saw Eve and Amy snuggled together, Amy's little head resting on Eve's shoulder. Celeste was standing there, grinning and holding a camera. She put her hands to her lips, and I slipped out quietly, following her back to the picnic table where some others were preparing breakfast. She scrolled through the pictures she had taken, stopping at one she liked best. "Here's what you'll look like as a family man." "Cute, huh?" she said. In the picture we were all snuggled together, Eve was in my arms and Amy was on top of us, her cheek resting just below Eve's chin. It was endearing. I used the portable shower we had set up, made from 55-gallon drums, fiberglass and heated by gas. You were allowed 20 gallons of fresh water pumped from a nearby spring. After dressing, I went back to the tables where Eve was up and Amy was sitting on her lap. Amy, the youngest of 4 and the only girl, often had to fight for attention. I showed Amy the bathhouse and explained it to her, giving her a fresh sweatsuit. "Sorry I didn't get any undies," I said with a grin. "Not to be outdone," she grinned back. "That's alright, I kind of like going commando." Amy, not fully understanding the conversation, surprised us all by wanting to shower with Eve. She emerged giggling, and when her mom asked what she was laughing about, she leaned close to answer, "Me and Miss Eve are going commando, we don't have panties on." She said it loud enough for a few to hear, and Eve glowed for a few minutes while she brushed Amy's hair. Breakfast was soon served, and we ate as a group familiar with each other after years of shared experiences. Eve told them how we met, mentioning that she slipped and fell off her balcony while I happened to be working there. By the time she was done, you would have thought I performed the ankle surgery by myself. Amy was enchanted, showing her admiration in the way only a child could. She came out with what was on her mind, saying, "You know, if you and Uncle Tommy got married, you'd be my aunt. How cool would that be?" Eve gently explained, "It would be very cool, sweetie. I might just marry him to spend more time with you, but he has to ask me first. We're not that far along yet, but he's already passed the sleeping together test. He doesn't snore and he doesn't hog the blankets like someone else did last night." Amy puffed up and protested, "I do not snore." Eve responded, "Yes, you do, baby. You snore like a cute little puppy." This made Amy feel a bit better, especially when Eve said she could call her Eve. When Amy asked if Eve could come back and watch the stars with them again, Eve looked at me. "I'd love to, sweetie, but that's up to Uncle Tommy. If he says I can, I will." Amy came up to me and tugged my beard, saying, "Can you come back next time, please, Uncle Tommy?" I looked at Eve, who seemed a bit anxious. "If she says yes when I ask her, I'd love it, Amy." Celeste and Eve smiled like it was a done deal. I made a mental note to keep my sister-in-law in check. She seemed to take it personally that I remain unmarried. Eve took another shower when we got to my house and emerged dressed in the jeans and t-shirt she had on yesterday, her hair and makeup perfect. Noticing my frown, she asked, "What's wrong?" I replied, "You're a really attractive woman. Why do you wear so much makeup and hide your beautiful face?" Her eyes seemed to tear up. Before I could react, she gave me a very nice kiss and said, "That's one of the sweetest things a man has ever said to me." "Thank you." As she headed to her car, I helped her get situated. This cast comes off next week, then a month of physical therapy, and I'm supposed to be as good as new. Thank you for last night. It was one of the most memorable experiences I've ever had. I'd love to go again if you want me to. After all, we wouldn't want to disappoint a 6-year-old. She took my phone, punched in her number, told me to call and left. I thought about her all week but didn't call. We lived in different worlds. I did some research and found that her family was wealthy. She had a trust fund from her maternal grandfather, and the family wealth was estimated just below $50 million, way out of my league. I received a sharp call on Thursday evening. "Why haven't you called me?" "Never mind. I'm just reminding you about lunch on Saturday. My dad hates to wait." She hung up before I could reply. I thought about driving my work truck but chose my MG instead, a small British sports car I had restored over 4 years. Despite its small engine, it was surprisingly fast and agile. When I arrived, Eve was waiting at the door. "Nice car," she said, and added, "You clean up very well." I had gone to my barber that morning. Celeste, my sister-in-law, was a successful stylist, and when she heard I was dining with Eve, she insisted I get a trim. She fussed over me for 45 minutes before saying, "You need to lose that beard. It makes you look 37, not 27. I wore a nice button-up shirt and casual slacks, about as dressed up as I wanted to get. When Eve met me at the door, I reached into my car for a bouquet of flowers. "Oh, you shouldn't have," she said, reaching for them. I told her they were for her mother, and her smile turned cool. I let it linger before pulling out another bouquet. "This one is for you." Her smile returned as she leaned in and whispered, "They're lovely." "Thank you. If you can be that thoughtful, maybe you can learn how to use a phone. It's simple if you can read, go to Contacts, find Eve and hit the button. It even dials for you." Before I could respond, we were through the door. Her parents were waiting in the foyer. The gift of flowers was unexpected, and she seemed genuinely happy to receive them. Her father, at 64, towered over my 5 feet 11 inches. He was in good shape, maintaining it with his home gym and regular workouts. As we sized each other up, the room seemed to shrink. We were like two dominant figures, each looking for an opportunity to assert themselves. It surprised me since I usually didn't react this way. He was known for trying to intimidate people with his size and strength, and his firm handshakes were almost legendary. I knew what was coming when he extended his hand. With a good grip and strong muscles from handling equipment and lifting heavy rolls of cable, he tried to squeeze my hand, but I squeezed back just a bit harder. It caught him by surprise. I saw his eyes widen momentarily before narrowing with irritation. Eve and others were expecting me to react like everyone else did and rub my hand, but I simply let go and continued with the conversation. They looked at him and he shrugged. Later I learned he had told them he had gone easy on me for Eve. Lunch was delicious and I was on my best behavior. He didn't stay long, citing pressing business. He thanked me for helping his daughter and I believe he genuinely meant it. It felt like a weight lifted when he left. Greta commented that while he might be intense at first, he really is a good man. She said it like she was used to defending him, but I found him quite interesting. They looked at me as if I had lost my mind. Then Greta smiled and said, "Interesting, what an apt description." They took me on a tour of the house, which included 7 bedrooms, a large pool house and a heated pool. It was clear how the wealthy lived. I thanked the cook for an excellent lunch when I saw the kitchen. I don't think she received many compliments. Eve had made a slideshow of the photos Celeste took, including a few of the meteors. She paused on one of us snuggled together. Greta remarked, "Such a nice picture. I hope in the not-too-distant future, I get an opportunity to enjoy some grandchildren." Eve laughed and kissed her cheek. "Relax, Mom. I'm only 22. I need to find someone I like well enough to have children with first. Don't rush me into that role just yet." We had a pleasant afternoon. As I was leaving, Greta sent Eve to fetch some of the dessert we enjoyed earlier. Once Eve was out of earshot, Greta started talking. "I want to thank you again for looking after my daughter in more ways than one. It wasn't lost on her that a stranger took care of her while her friends continued to party. She told me she had the best time when you took her to see the meteors. Tommy, I want you to be careful around her. You come from different worlds, and I don't want either of you to get hurt." Before I could respond, Eve returned. She insisted I take her for a ride in my car. We spent a pleasant couple of hours drifting around. She had me stop in an empty parking lot before we returned. "Why are we stopping here?" I asked. "So I can do this," she replied.